My fiance texted, "Wedding's still on, but I'm spending the last few nights before with my ex-boyfriend for closure." I replied, "Do what you need to do." Then I called the venue and canceled everything. She found out at her bachelorette party when the venue called her about the cancellation, and then Wednesday afternoon hit me like a freight train carrying nothing but disappointment and lukewarm coffee. I was sitting at my desk in downtown Chicago, contemplating whether the fluorescent lights above me were specifically designed to suck the soul out of corporate drones like myself, when my phone decided to detonate my entire existence. I'd just wrapped up 3 back-to-back client meetings that felt like medieval torture sessions disguised as strategic planning discussions, and honestly, I was already questioning my life choices before my phone even buzzed. The notification popped up from Brooke Patterson, my fiancée, my supposed ride or die, the woman I was planning to legally bind myself to in exactly 3 days. 3 days. I was expecting the usual sweet nonsense she'd been bombarding me with for weeks. You know, the typical bride-to-be chaos. Did you confirm the flowers? Or my mom wants to move table 6 closer to the band? Or do you think ivory napkins clash with champagne tablecloths? The kind of questions that made me wonder if wedding planning was actually a form of advanced psychological warfare designed to break strong men. Instead, I got this absolute masterpiece of human audacity. Wedding's still on, but I'm spending the last few nights before with my ex-boyfriend for closure. I blinked at the screen like it was written in ancient hieroglyphics. Read it again. Nope, still said the same thing. My brain did that thing where it completely short-circuits and you just sit there like a deer in headlights, except the headlights are attached to a garbage truck heading straight for your dignity. Derek. She was talking about Derek Morrison, the walking disaster she claimed she'd completely erased from her life like a bad tattoo. The guy she swore up and down was ancient history and totally irrelevant to our relationship. The same Derek who mysteriously kept popping up in her social media likes, and who somehow always managed to be at the same bars we frequented. Pure coincidence, right? Sure, Brooke. And I'm secretly Batman that I sat there staring at this text message like it might suddenly rearrange itself into something that made sense. Maybe autocorrect had gone rogue. Maybe she meant to send this to her therapist, or her diary, or literally anyone else on the planet besides the man she was supposed to marry in 72 hours. But no, this was definitely meant for me, because apparently I'd been dating someone who thought closure with an ex was a totally normal pre-wedding activity. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard like they were afraid to make contact. What exactly does one say to that? Thanks for the heads up, honey. Have fun with your emotional baggage. Should I pick up condoms for you too while I'm out? Great idea. Nothing says ready for marriage like a sleepover with your ex. Instead, my apparently masochistic fingers typed out, "Do what you need to do." I hit send and immediately wanted to throw my phone into the Chicago River. What the hell was wrong with me? Why didn't I respond with the righteous fury this situation clearly deserved? Why wasn't I demanding explanations or setting boundaries or doing literally anything that resembled having a backbone? Her response came back faster than a boomerang. "You're the best, Marcus. So mature and secure. This is why I'm marrying you." Oh, the irony was absolutely delicious. She was marrying me because I was mature and secure enough to let her shack up with her ex-boyfriend right before our wedding. What a catch I was. So mature, so secure, so completely spineless that I'd just given my blessing to what was essentially sanctioned cheating with a side of emotional manipulation that I put the phone down on my desk and stared at it like it might explode. The office around me continued its usual Wednesday afternoon hum. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, Karen from accounting laughing way too loudly at something that definitely wasn't that funny. Normal people doing normal things while my world imploded in real time via text message. The thing is, I knew instantly, and I mean immediately, like some kind of divine revelation, that the wedding was already dead. Not postponed, not complicated, not something we'd work through with couples therapy and awkward conversations. Dead. Deceased. Pushing up daisies. It had died the moment she hit send on that text, and honestly, it had probably been on life support for months. Because here's the thing about closure. It's the biggest load of crap ever invented by people who want to have their cake and eat it too. You don't need closure from someone you're truly over. You don't need to spend a few nights processing feelings that should have been handled before you accepted someone else's engagement ring. And you definitely don't announce this brilliant plan to your fiancé 3 days before the wedding like you're discussing dinner plans. Sitting there in my beige cubicle, surrounded by motivational posters about teamwork and synergy, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. Pure, crystalline clarity about exactly what I needed to do. The wedding was dead, but I was the only one who knew it yet. Brooke was off planning her little closure adventure, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just handed me the perfect exit strategy wrapped in her own selfish delusions that I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts. Time to start making some calls. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the DJ, every single vendor who was expecting to make our special day happen. Because if Brooke wanted closure, I was about to give her the most definitive closure she'd ever experienced. 3 days before what should have been the happiest day of my life, I was about to become a runaway groom. And honestly, I'd never felt more relieved about anything in my entire existence. My first call was to Lakeside Manor, the venue where we were supposed to pledge our eternal love in front of 150 witnesses who were about to get a front row seat to the greatest wedding cancellation in Chicago history. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. Lakeside Manor, this is Jennifer. How can I make your special day perfect? This is Marcus Grant, I said, my voice surprisingly steady for someone who was about to torch his entire future. Cancel everything for Saturday. The silence on the other end was so profound I could practically hear Jennifer's brain malfunctioning. I'm sorry, did you say cancel? As in, the entire wedding. That's exactly what I said. The whole shebang. Done. Finito. Over and out. Jennifer's professional composure cracked like a cheap vase hitting concrete. Mr. Grant, I have to remind you that with less than 72 hours notice, you'll forfeit the entire deposit, plus we'll need to charge you for, I don't care, I interrupted, feeling a weird sense of liberation wash over me. Charge whatever you want. Send the bill to Marcus Grant, same address you have on file. Just make sure nobody shows up expecting a wedding on Saturday, because it's not happening. After Jennifer finished sputtering about contracts and policies, I hung up and immediately dialed the honeymoon resort in Maui. Because nothing says dodged a bullet like canceling your romantic getaway to paradise where you would have spent a week pretending everything was fine while your new wife probably texted Derek about their amazing closure sessions. Aloha, Grand Wailea Resort. This is Kailani speaking. Hi Kailani, this is Marcus Grant. I need to cancel my honeymoon reservation for this weekend. Oh no, is everything okay? Did someone get sick? I almost laughed. You could say that. My fiancé came down with a severe case of needing closure with her ex-boyfriend, so we won't be needing that Ocean View suite after all. Poor Kailani didn't know what to do with that information. I'm so sorry to hear that, Mr. Grant. Let me check your cancellation policy. The next 2 hours became a masterclass in efficient relationship demolition. I called Bloom and Blossom Florists and told them to keep their overpriced roses. The DJ got the axe. Sorry, buddy. No need for your romantic playlist when the bride's making her own music with her ex. The caterer, Magnificent Meals, probably thought I'd lost my mind when I canceled their 5-course dinner for 150 people. But honestly, the only thing magnificent about this situation was how spectacularly it was falling apart. Each phone call felt like removing another weight from my shoulders. The photographer who was supposed to capture our magical moments canceled. The transportation company with their fancy vintage Rolls-Royce gone. The bar service that was going to keep everyone liquored up enough to pretend this was a good idea, not happening. Even the stupid ice sculpture of 2 swans that Brooke insisted we needed because it was symbolic, melted before it was even carved. The cake was the hardest call to make, not because I was emotional about it, but because Mrs. Henderson at Sweet Dreams Bakery had put her heart and soul into creating what she called a masterpiece of buttercream artistry. She'd been working on our 3-tier monstrosity for weeks, and I could hear her heart breaking through the phone when I told her to eat it herself or donate it to a homeless shelter. But Marcus, dear, I've already piped all the roses. The fondant bride and groom are perfect. Are you sure you can't work this out? Mrs. Henderson, the fondant groom is about to find himself in the same situation as the real one, abandoned for someone else. Trust me, this is for the best. By the time I was done making calls, my phone battery was dead and my conscience was surprisingly clear. I just systematically dismantled what was supposed to be the biggest day of my life, and instead of feeling devastated, I felt like I'd just escaped from prison. That's when I realized I needed to call Jordan Clark, my best man, and the only person stupid enough to agree to stand up there with me while I made the biggest mistake of my life. Jordan answered on the first ring, probably expecting some last-minute groomsman logistics. Yo, Marcus, please tell me you're not calling about the bachelor party again. I already told you, what happens in Vegas definitely did not stay in Vegas, and I have the photos to prove it. Jordan, I said, I need you to sit down. Dude, I'm at work. I can't just... Sit down, Jordan. Trust me on this one. I heard the squeak of his office chair. Okay, I'm sitting. You're starting to freak me out, man. What's going on? Instead of explaining, I forwarded him Brooke's text message, the one that had started this whole beautiful disaster. Then I waited, listening to the sound of Jordan reading and processing what was probably the most audacious pre-wedding communication in human history. The silence stretched on for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, in a voice that sounded like he was speaking to a small child who'd just eaten paint chips, Jordan said, "She actually thought you'd say yes to that. Apparently, I'm just that mature and secure. Marcus, please tell me you didn't actually say yes to this insanity." I told her to do what she needed to do. Another pause. And then I canceled everything. The wedding's off, Jordan. Completely, totally, 100% off. I could practically hear Jordan's grin through the phone. Holy shit, dude. You actually did it. You pulled the plug on the whole thing. I need you to call the groomsmen. Let them know they can return their tuxes and make other plans for Saturday. The Marcus and Brooke show has been permanently canceled. This is the best news I've heard all year, Jordan said. I mean, I'm sorry you're going through this, but dude, you just dodged a nuclear missile. I'll call everyone right now. Thanks, man. I owe you one. You don't owe me anything. You just gave me the best story I'll ever tell at parties for the rest of my life. After hanging up with Jordan, I packed my stuff from the apartment Brooke and I shared. It was amazing how little of my actual life was intertwined with hers. My clothes, my books, my coffee maker that she always complained was too loud in the mornings. Everything fit into 3 boxes and a suitcase that I left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that read, "For closure." Then I walked out the door and never looked back. That night, while Brooke was out living her best bachelorette life downtown, completely oblivious to the fact that her wedding had been systematically dismantled like a house of cards in a hurricane, I was camped out at Jordan's apartment with him and his girlfriend Rachel, armed with enough snacks to survive a small apocalypse and the kind of morbid anticipation you usually reserve for watching disaster movies. Jordan's place was perfect for this kind of operation. A corner apartment with huge windows overlooking the city, a sectional couch that could comfortably seat a small army, and most importantly, excellent Wi-Fi for monitoring the incoming shitstorm. Rachel had gone full event coordinator mode, setting up what she called mission control on the coffee table, laptops, phone chargers, a notepad for keeping track of developments, and enough junk food to feed a fraternity house during finals week. This is either going to be the most epic meltdown in social media history, or absolutely nothing will happen and we'll all feel stupid, Rachel said, arranging bags of popcorn like she was preparing for a movie marathon. But honestly, based on what you've told us about Brooke, I'm betting on epic meltdown. Jordan was practically vibrating with excitement. Dude, I've been waiting for something like this my entire life. Remember in college when Sarah found out Brad was cheating through his Instagram story? This is going to be 10 times better. I had to admit, their enthusiasm was infectious. After spending months walking on eggshells around Brooke's increasingly dramatic wedding demands, it felt good to be around people who appreciated the sheer absurdity of what was happening. Plus, I'd already gone through the initial shock and anger during my vendor canceling spree. Now I was just curious to see how long it would take for reality to hit Brooke like a freight train carrying a load of her own poor life choices. I still can't believe she actually sent you that text, Rachel said, shaking her head. Like, what was the thought process there? Hey honey, I know we're getting married in 3 days, but I'm going to go bang my ex-boyfriend real quick for emotional reasons. Hope that's cool. The best part, Jordan added, is that she thought Marcus would just sit there and take it. Like he's some kind of doormat who'd be grateful she was even bothering to inform him about her extracurricular activities. I stretched out on the couch, feeling more relaxed than I had in weeks. You know what's funny? I think she genuinely believed I'd be okay with it. Like, in her mind, being mature and secure means letting your fiancé do whatever she wants without consequences. That's not mature, Rachel said. That's being a pushover. There's a difference between being understanding and being a human welcome mat. We'd strategically blocked Brooke and her entire wedding party from all our social media accounts. But Jordan had kept his phone open to monitor the situation. He'd set up a whole system, screenshots, screen recordings, the works. The man was more prepared than a war correspondent heading into a combat zone. So what's the timeline here? Rachel asked, consulting her notepad like she was planning a military operation. When do you think she'll figure out the wedding's been canceled? I checked my watch. The bachelorette party started at 7. Knowing Brooke, they'll spend the first few hours taking photos for Instagram, drinking overpriced cocktails, and talking about how blessed she is. The venue's automated system sends cancellation confirmations at 9:30, so we've got about an hour and a half of peace before all hell breaks loose, Jordan finished. Assuming she even checks her email during the party, Rachel pointed out. Some people actually put their phones away during special events. Jordan and I looked at her like she'd just suggested people might stop breathing for fun. You've met Brooke, right? Jordan said. The woman who live-tweeted her own engagement? She's not putting her phone away for anything. He was right, of course. Brooke was the kind of person who documented every moment of her life like she was running for president and needed proof of all her activities. Her Instagram story probably had more updates than a breaking news feed during a natural disaster. Plus, I added, she specifically requested to be copied on all vendor communications. She wanted to stay in the loop and make sure nothing went wrong. Well, congratulations, Brooke. You're definitely going to stay in the loop. We settled in to wait, making predictions about how the night would unfold. Rachel thought Brooke would call me first, probably screaming. Jordan was betting on a complete social media meltdown with angry posts and dramatic proclamations. I was leaning toward a full-scale family intervention, complete with her mother Helen showing up at Jordan's door, demanding explanations. What I don't understand, Rachel said, opening a bag of chips, is why Derek went along with this plan. Like, what guy thinks it's a good idea to sleep with someone else's fiancé 3 days before their wedding? The kind of guy who's been trying to break them up for months, Jordan replied. Think about it. He gets to play the supportive ex-boyfriend while simultaneously sabotaging her relationship. It's actually kind of brilliant, in a completely psychotic way. Except he didn't count on Marcus having a spine, I pointed out. His whole plan depended on me being too pathetic to do anything about it. Their plan, Rachel corrected. Don't forget, Brooke was in on this too. She probably thought she could have her cake and eat it too. Marry you for stability and keep Derek around for whatever pathetic emotional validation she gets from him. The more we talked about it, the clearer it became that this whole situation had been brewing for months. All those times Derek mysteriously showed up places. All those conversations about closure and unresolved feelings. All those moments when Brooke seemed distracted or defensive when I asked about her past relationships. It hadn't been paranoia or insecurity on my part. It had been pattern recognition. You know what the really messed up part is? I said, grabbing a handful of popcorn. If she'd just been honest about still having feelings for Derek, we could have broken up like normal people. Instead, she decided to string me along right up until the wedding, like I was some kind of backup plan. That's what narcissists do, Rachel said matter-of-factly. They keep people around as options while they explore other opportunities. The engagement ring was probably just insurance in case things didn't work out with Derek. Jordan's phone buzzed with a notification, and we all froze like we'd been caught doing something illegal. He checked the screen and grinned. It's starting. At exactly 9:23 p.m., Jordan's phone lit up like a Christmas tree having an electrical malfunction. We'd been sitting there for over 2 hours, munching on snacks and making increasingly ridiculous predictions about how Brooke's night would implode, when the automated email system at Lakeside Manor decided to drop its little digital bomb right into her perfectly curated bachelorette party. Oh shit, here we go, Jordan said, his eyes glued to his phone screen. The venue just sent the cancellation notice. Rachel leaned over his shoulder, practically vibrating with anticipation. Did she see it yet? Give it a minute, I said, feeling weirdly calm about the whole thing. She's probably too busy posing for photos to check her email immediately. I was right, of course. Brooke's Instagram story had been updating every 15 minutes like clockwork since 7 o'clock. The progression was almost artistic in its predictability. Pre-party shots of her getting ready in a white satin robe that probably cost more than most people's rent. Arrival photos at the rooftop bar in matching Bride Tribe shirts that made everyone look like they were advertising a cult. Group shots with overpriced cocktails that came with sparklers because apparently regular drinks weren't extra enough for this crowd. Her maid of honor, Gretchen Morrison, yes, Derek's sister, because apparently this whole situation needed an extra layer of family drama, had been documenting everything with the enthusiasm of a war correspondent covering the liberation of Paris. The photos showed 12 women in various shades of pink and white, all grinning like they'd just won the lottery, while Brooke held court in the center wearing a tiara that looked like it came from a children's dress-up box. "Look at this," Jordan said, showing us his screen. "Posted 20 minutes ago. My girls got me the perfect tiara because I'm literally a princess tonight. 3 more days until I become Mrs. Grant." The irony is just chef's kiss. Then, at 9:31 p.m., the tone of Gretchen's posts took a sharp left turn into panic territory. "Is Marcus with you guys tonight? Brooke's freaking out about something and won't tell us what's wrong." "And there it is," Rachel said, clapping her hands together. The moment reality crashed into fantasy land. What happened next was like watching a car accident in slow motion. If car accidents involved designer cocktails and women in matching t-shirts instead of actual vehicles. Jordan kept screenshot capturing everything as the updates got progressively more frantic. Gretchen's posts went from confused to concerned to borderline hysterical in the span of about 10 minutes. "OMG, something is seriously wrong. Brooke just locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. She's crying and screaming about Marcus ruining everything. What is happening?" "The bathroom breakdown," I observed. Classic Brooke move. Whenever she can't control a situation, she retreats to the nearest lockable room and has a complete meltdown. "Should we feel bad about this?" Rachel asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't feeling particularly guilty. "About what? About her finally facing the consequences of her own actions?" "Nah, I'm good," I replied, grabbing another handful of popcorn. The real entertainment started when Brooke's mother, Helen Patterson, began her assault on everyone's voicemail. Jordan had the brilliant idea to put his phone on speaker so we could all enjoy the increasingly unhinged messages as they came in. Message 1, 9:47 p.m. "Jordan, this is Helen Patterson. I need you to call me immediately. There's been some kind of misunderstanding about the wedding arrangements, and I need to speak with Marcus right away." Message 2, 9:52 p.m. "Jordan, I don't know what kind of childish game Marcus is playing, but he needs to stop this nonsense immediately. He's ruining my daughter's life over nothing. Call me back." Message 3, 10:08 p.m. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Marcus is being completely unreasonable and childish. We have 150 guests flying in from all over the country, and he's throwing a tantrum like a spoiled brat. We'll sue him for every penny of those deposits if he doesn't fix this immediately." The legal threats, Rachel noted. Right on schedule. When narcissists can't manipulate, they always go straight to intimidation. "Except all the contracts are in my name," I pointed out. "Good luck suing me for canceling my own wedding." Message 4 was where Helen really let her true colors show. "Fine, if that's how he wants to play it. We'll have the wedding without him. Brooke deserves better than some paranoid, insecure little boy who can't handle a mature woman having closure with her past." "Oh, this is getting good," Jordan said, rubbing his hands together like he was about to watch his favorite movie. But the real cherry on top of this disaster Sunday came when Derek himself decided to get involved. At 10:23 p.m., he actually had the audacity to text Jordan directly, as if they were old buddies who regularly chatted about relationship drama. "Hey man, can we talk? This whole thing is getting out of hand. Brooke is hysterical, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can you ask Marcus to call me? We need to have a man-to-man conversation about this." Jordan looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Want me to respond?" "Go for it," I said. "But keep it classy." Jordan's fingers flew over his keyboard. "My guy, you literally told the groom you'd be sleeping over with his bride 3 days before the wedding. What exactly did you think would happen? that he'd send you a fruit basket and a thank you note. The response came back almost immediately. It's not like that. It's complicated. Brooke has unresolved feelings, and she needed closure before she could fully commit to Marcus. I was just trying to help her work through her emotions. Oh, how noble of you, Rachel said sarcastically. What a selfless act of service, sleeping with someone else's fiancé to help her work through her feelings. Jordan typed back, Dude, if you're going to home wreck, at least own it. Don't insult everyone's intelligence by pretending you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. Meanwhile, the Instagram updates from the bachelorette party had completely stopped. The last post was from 9:19 p.m., a group shot of everyone toasting with champagne, captioned, To new beginnings and happily ever after. The timestamp made it even more perfect. They'd been celebrating right up until the moment the cancellation email arrived. I kind of feel bad for the other girls, Rachel said. They probably have no idea what's going on. They're just there to celebrate their friend's wedding, and suddenly, she's having a complete breakdown in a bathroom. Don't feel too bad, I replied. Half of them have been dealing with Brooke's drama for years. This is probably just Tuesday for them. By 10:45 p.m., the messages had stopped coming. Either Brooke's phone had died, she'd thrown it in the Chicago River, or someone had physically restrained her from sending any more unhinged communications. The silence was almost more ominous than the chaos had been. Think it's over? Rachel asked. Jordan and I looked at each other and started laughing. Oh, this isn't even close to over, I said. This is just the opening act. Tomorrow's going to be the real show. Thursday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train carrying a cargo load of fresh bullshit, and Brooke was apparently the conductor. I woke up on Jordan's couch to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and what can only be described as the most creative work of fiction I'd ever seen posted on social media. Rachel was already up, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at her laptop screen with the kind of fascination usually reserved for watching natural disasters unfold. Marcus, she said without looking up, you need to see this. Brooke just posted what might be the most delusional thing I've ever read on Facebook. I shuffled over, still in yesterday's clothes and feeling like I'd been hit by a truck driven by my own poor life choices. On Rachel's screen was a Facebook post that had apparently gone live at 6:47 a.m., because nothing says stable mental state like crafting elaborate lies before most people have had their morning coffee. With a heavy heart, the post began, I'm announcing that our wedding has been postponed due to Marcus's ongoing mental health struggles. Over the past few weeks, Marcus has become increasingly paranoid and has been making false accusations about my friendships and my past. While this is heartbreaking and devastating, I believe in standing by the people we love during their darkest moments. I'm committed to supporting Marcus through whatever he's going through, even if it means delaying our special day. Please keep us both in your thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. Love conquers all. Hashtag stand by your man. Hashtag mental health matters. Hashtag love wins. I stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds, my brain trying to process the sheer audacity of what I was reading. She's actually claiming I'm mentally ill because I didn't want her sleeping with her ex-boyfriend before our wedding? It gets better, Jordan said, appearing from the kitchen with his own coffee. Look at the comments. She's got a whole support network going of people who apparently think you're a controlling psychopath. Sure enough, the post already had 47 likes and 23 comments, mostly from people I'd never met offering their thoughts and prayers and praising Brooke for being such a strong, supportive woman during my apparent psychological breakdown. Her Aunt Diane had commented, You're an angel for standing by him, sweetie. Some men just can't handle strong women. Her college roommate added, Mental health is so important. You're doing the right thing by getting him help. This is incredible, Rachel said, scrolling through the responses. She's actually convinced people that you canceled your own wedding because you're having a nervous breakdown, not because she told you she was going to cheat on you. The best defense is a good offense, I said, feeling a familiar rage building in my chest. Can't be the villain if you paint yourself as the victim first. But here's the thing about the internet in 2025, screenshots are forever, and the truth has a way of surfacing faster than a dead fish in a shallow pond. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook for the first time in months, because sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, and Brooke had just brought a flamethrower to what should have been a civil conversation. My post was simple, direct, and included all the receipts. No paranoia. No breakdown. No false accusations. Just facts. My fiancée informed me via text that she would be spending her last 2 nights before our wedding with her ex-boyfriend for closure. I canceled our wedding. That's it. That's the whole story. Then I attached a screenshot of Brooke's original text message, timestamp and all, followed by another screenshot of her response calling me mature and secure for agreeing to let her bang Derek Morrison before we exchanged vows. That I hit post and sat back to watch democracy in action. The response was immediate and absolutely beautiful. Within 5 minutes, my post had more likes than Brooke's, and the comments were rolling in faster than I could read them. Brooke told you what? From my cousin Sarah. Holy shit, dude. You dodged a bullet from my college buddy Mike. This woman is absolutely insane. From Rachel's sister, who I'd met exactly once at a barbecue. But the real nail in Brooke's coffin came from an unexpected source. Derek's father, Robert Morrison, had apparently been dealing with his own family drama and decided to share some information that completely obliterated whatever credibility Derek might have had left. Robert posted on his own Facebook page, and someone tagged me in it within minutes. For anyone following the drama with my son Derek and the canceled Patterson Grant wedding, I feel compelled to share some facts. Derek has been lying to everyone, including the Patterson family, about having cancer. The medical emergency that supposedly brought him and Brooke back together? Complete fabrication. He's been using this lie to manipulate people for months. I found out yesterday when I called his oncologist to offer support. There is no oncologist. There is no cancer. There is no medical crisis. There's just my son being a manipulative piece of garbage, and I'm done covering for him. The post included photos from a golf tournament Derek had played in the weekend before, looking perfectly healthy and celebrating his hole-in-one with a beer that definitely wasn't prescribed by any cancer doctor. Oh my God, Rachel said, reading over my shoulder. Derek's been faking cancer to get sympathy from Brooke. And now his own father is exposing him on social media, Jordan added. This keeps getting better and better. Within an hour, the entire narrative had flipped. Brooke's post was being shared and mocked across multiple friend groups, with people commenting things like, "Did you really think nobody would fact-check this?" And "Girl, the screenshots don't lie." Someone had even created a side-by-side comparison of her post and my screenshots with the caption, "When keeping it real goes wrong." The best part was watching Brooke try to control the damage in real time. She started deleting comments that didn't support her narrative, then deleted the entire post when the negative responses outnumbered the supportive ones. Then she posted again, this time claiming her account had been hacked and that someone was spreading lies about her. But the internet had already done its thing. Screenshots of her original post were circulating, along with my response and Derek's father's cancer revelation. The whole story was spreading faster than gossip at a small-town hair salon, and there was absolutely nothing Brooke could do to stop it. Her second post lasted about 20 minutes before she deleted that too. Then her third post, a rambling essay about toxic masculinity and emotional abuse, disappeared after 30 minutes. By noon, she'd given up on Facebook entirely and made her Instagram account private. But the damage was already done. My phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends, family members, and even people I barely knew, all expressing their shock and support. "I never liked her anyway," my sister texted. "She always seemed fake." My mom called to make sure I was okay and to tell me she'd already told everyone at her book club what had happened. The best message came from my grandmother. "Good riddance to bad rubbish. Come over for dinner Sunday, and I'll make your favorite pot roast. You're better off without that floozy." Gotta love Grandma's no-nonsense approach to relationship advice. Thursday night at Jordan's apartment felt like being inside a fortress under siege, except instead of medieval armies, we were dealing with an angry mob of wedding guests who apparently thought showing up unannounced was a totally reasonable response to having their Saturday plans canceled. I was sprawled on the couch, finally starting to relax after watching Brooke's reputation get absolutely demolished on social media all day, when Jordan's Ring doorbell started going absolutely berserk. "What the hell?" Jordan said, checking his phone. "Someone's at the door." The video feed showed what can only be described as the most pathetic war party ever assembled. Leading the charge was Helen Patterson, Brooke's mother, dressed like she was heading to a country club board meeting rather than staging an intervention. Behind her stood Roger, Brooke's dad, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else on Earth. Gretchen was there too, still wearing her Bride Tribe shirt from the night before, which was either dedication or a complete inability to read the room. And bringing up the rear, like the world's most unwelcome surprise guest, was Derek Morrison himself. But the real star of this shit show was Brooke, front and center, still wearing her bachelorette party tiara, because apparently accessories are the most important thing when you're having a public meltdown. "This is actually happening," Rachel whispered, peering over Jordan's shoulder at the phone screen. "They actually formed a posse and came here." The doorbell rang again, followed by aggressive knocking that sounded like Helen was trying to beat down the door with her perfectly manicured fists. Jordan pressed the intercom button on his phone, and suddenly we could hear the circus that was happening in his hallway. "Jordan Clark, I know you're in there." Helen's voice came through the speaker, shrill and demanding. "We need to speak with Marcus immediately. This has gone on long enough." "Ma'am, this is a private residence," Jordan replied through the intercom, his voice perfectly calm and professional. "You need to leave. Don't you dare ma'am me, young man." Helen shot back. "Do you have any idea what your friend has done? We have 150 guests flying in from all over the country for a wedding that's supposed to happen in 2 days." Roger stepped forward, looking like he was about to negotiate a hostage situation. "Jordan, please. We just want to talk. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. Maybe we can work something out." "Work something out?" I said to Jordan. "What are we, negotiating a business merger?" Through the speaker, we could hear Brooke's voice, high-pitched and hysterical. "Marcus is being completely unreasonable. All I wanted was closure. I wasn't going to actually do anything with Derek. Then why did you ask to spend 2 nights with him?" Jordan asked through the intercom, and I had to give him credit for cutting straight to the heart of the matter. That's when Derek decided to chime in, because apparently this situation wasn't already ridiculous enough. "Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we just talk this out, man to man? I know how this looks, but it's not what you think." Jordan looked at me with raised eyebrows. I shook my head and made a throat-slitting gesture. No way in hell was I having a man-to-man conversation with the guy who'd been plotting to sleep with my fiancée while pretending to have cancer. "Derek," Jordan said into the intercom, "you're literally the last person who should be talking to him right now. You told the groom you'd be sleeping over with his bride. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" "It's not like that," Derek protested. "We have history. She needed to process her feelings before she could fully commit to someone else." "By processing, you mean sleeping with her," Rachel called out, loud enough for the intercom to pick up. Gretchen's voice joined the chorus. "This is all just a big misunderstanding. Brooke loves Marcus. She's always loved Marcus. Derek was just helping her work through some unresolved emotions." "Unresolved emotions," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it now?" The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Helen making increasingly ridiculous demands and threats. She wanted me to come downstairs and discuss this like adults. She wanted Jordan to stop enabling Marcus's childish behavior. She wanted the wedding to happen as planned because too much money had already been spent, and what would people think? The best part was when she started making legal threats again. "We'll sue you for emotional distress. We'll sue you for the deposits. We'll sue you for everything you're worth." "Ma'am," Jordan replied, "you can't sue someone for canceling their own wedding. Also, I'm pretty sure emotional distress requires proving that the person actually caused the distress, not just responded appropriately to it." That's when Brooke completely lost it. Through the intercom, we could hear her screaming at the top of her lungs. "This is insane. I was doing Marcus a favor by marrying him. He should be grateful that someone like me even wanted to be with someone like him." "And there it is," Rachel said quietly. "The truth finally comes out. I could have had anyone." Brooke continued. "Derek has been begging me to come back to him for years. I chose Marcus because I thought he was stable and secure, but he's just as crazy and jealous as every other guy I've dated." "Wow," I said. "She's really selling herself as quite the catch there." Roger's voice came through next, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely embarrassed. "Brooke, honey, maybe we should go home and talk about this privately." "No," she shrieked. "I'm not leaving until Marcus comes down here and explains himself. He owes me that much." "Actually," Jordan said through the intercom, "he doesn't owe you anything. But I'll tell you what, security is on their way up, so you might want to start heading toward the elevator." That wasn't actually true, but it had the desired effect. We could hear Helen sputtering indignantly and Roger trying to convince everyone to leave before things got worse. Gretchen was arguing with Derek about whether they should wait for security or just leave, and through it all, Brooke was still screaming about how unfair everything was. The final nail in the coffin came when Derek tried one last desperate appeal. Marcus, if you're listening, just give me 5 minutes to explain. This whole thing got blown way out of proportion. Brooke and I have a connection that goes back years, and she needed to explore that before she could fully commit to you. I was just trying to help her be sure about her decision. Jordan's response was absolutely perfect. Dude, you just admitted you were trying to steal another man's fiancée. On camera, while standing outside his friend's apartment building. At 10 o'clock at night. Wearing yesterday's clothes. Maybe it's time to reevaluate your life choices. Within 5 minutes, building security actually did show up, and we watched through the Ring camera as the whole pathetic group was escorted toward the elevators. Brooke's last words, screamed over her shoulder as they disappeared from view, were, "You'll regret this forever, Marcus. You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Somehow, I said, settling back into the couch, I doubt that. Friday rolled around with all the pomp and circumstance of a funeral march, which was pretty fitting considering we were supposed to be having our rehearsal dinner at the Oakwood Country Club that evening. Instead of practicing wedding vows and toasting to our future happiness, I was sitting in Jordan's kitchen eating leftover Chinese takeout and watching Brooke's world continue to implode in spectacular fashion. The day started quietly enough. Too quietly, actually. After Thursday night's doorbell invasion, I was expecting some kind of escalation, but my phone had been surprisingly silent all morning. No angry texts, no voicemails from Helen threatening legal action, no social media posts claiming I'd been possessed by demons or abducted by aliens. It was almost unsettling. This is the calm before the storm, Rachel said, sipping her coffee and scrolling through her phone. Brooke's not the type to just give up and accept defeat. She's planning something. She was right, of course. At exactly 2:30 p.m., my phone rang with a call from the Oakwood Country Club. I recognized the number because I called them Wednesday to cancel our rehearsal dinner reservation, along with everything else on our wedding weekend itinerary. Mr. Grant, this is Patricia from Oakwood Country Club, the voice said, sounding frazzled and confused. I'm calling because we have a situation here, and I need to verify some information with you. What kind of situation? I asked, though I had a pretty good idea where this was heading. Well, sir, we have a woman here claiming to be your fiancée, and she's insisting that your rehearsal dinner is still on for tonight. She's with an older woman who says she's the mother of the bride, and they're demanding that we honor your reservation. They're saying there was some kind of miscommunication about the cancellation. I could hear shouting in the background, and Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. Mr. Grant, I have to ask, did you actually cancel this reservation, or was there some kind of mistake? I absolutely canceled it, I said. Wednesday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. I spoke with someone named Jennifer, I think. The reservation was completely canceled, and I was told there would be cancellation fees. That's what our records show, Patricia confirmed. But these women are insisting it's a mistake, and they're causing quite a scene. The older woman is demanding to speak with the manager and threatening to charge everything to your credit card. My credit card. I laughed. Patricia, I need you to understand something very clearly. I am not getting married tomorrow. There is no wedding. There is no rehearsal dinner. These women are not authorized to use my credit card for anything, and if they try, it's fraud. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I understand completely. Should I call security? Through the phone, I could hear Helen's voice getting louder and more indignant. This is absolutely ridiculous. We've been planning this event for months. You cannot treat paying customers this way. Patricia, I said. Yes, please call security. And if they refuse to leave, call the police. I want this documented in case they try to pull any more stunts. 20 minutes later, Patricia called me back. Mr. Grant, I wanted to follow up. We did have to call the police to escort them off the property. The younger woman became quite belligerent when we explained that the reservation was canceled, and the older woman actually tried to physically push past our hostess to get to the private dining room. Are you serious? Unfortunately, yes. The police report is being filed as trespassing and attempted fraud. They tried to force us to charge your card for services you'd already canceled. The officer said this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think with canceled weddings. I thanked Patricia and hung up, feeling a weird mix of vindication and secondhand embarrassment. How desperate do you have to be to show up at a venue you know has been canceled and try to force them to honor a reservation that doesn't exist? But the real entertainment came later that afternoon when my phone rang again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Marcus. The voice was hesitant, embarrassed. This is Roger. Roger Patterson. Brooke's dad. The man who'd looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor during Thursday night's apartment invasion. Hi, Roger, I said, genuinely curious about what he could possibly want to discuss. Listen, son, he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Is this really what you want? Is this how you want this whole thing to end? For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Roger had always seemed like a decent guy who'd gotten stuck in the middle of his wife and daughter's drama. But then I remembered why we were having this conversation in the first place. Roger, did you see Brooke's text message? The one where she told me she was going to spend 2 nights with her ex-boyfriend before our wedding. Silence on the other end. Because I've got screenshots if you want to see them, I continued, along with her response calling me mature and secure for letting her do it. More silence. And did you know that Derek has been lying about having cancer? That the whole medical emergency that brought them back together was completely fake? A long sigh. Yeah, I saw Robert's post yesterday about Derek faking the cancer thing. So knowing all that, do you really think I should marry your daughter tomorrow? The pause stretched on for so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Roger spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. No. No. I guess I wouldn't want my son to marry someone who did that to him. I appreciate your honesty, Roger. I really do. Marcus, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I knew Helen was encouraging this whole closure thing with Derek. She thought he had money, thought maybe Brooke could do better. I should have said something, but... He trailed off. But what? But I've been thinking about divorce for 2 years, and I didn't want to rock the boat until after the wedding. Guess that doesn't matter now. Holy shit. Brooke's parents were getting divorced too? This day just kept getting better and better. I'm sorry to hear that, Roger. But maybe this is all for the best. For everyone. Yeah, he said sadly. Maybe it is. Take care of yourself, Marcus. You're a good kid, and you deserve better than this circus. After he hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process everything that had happened. In the span of 3 days, I'd canceled my wedding, watched my ex-fiancé have multiple public meltdowns, been threatened with lawsuits, had my mental health questioned on social media, gotten invaded by angry relatives, and now learned that my almost-in-laws were splitting up too. And somehow, despite all the chaos and drama, I felt better than I had in months. Everything okay? Jordan asked, walking into the kitchen. Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Everything's actually pretty great. Friday night was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner. Instead, I was sitting in Jordan's living room eating pizza and watching what can only be described as the most spectacular social media meltdown in human history unfold in real time on Instagram Live. If someone had told me a week ago that I'd be spending the night before my wedding watching my ex-fiancé have a complete psychological breakdown on the internet, I would have recommended they seek professional help. But here we were, living in the timeline where nothing made sense and everything was simultaneously horrible and hilarious. The IT started around 9 o'clock. Rachel was the first to notice, frantically waving her phone at us from across the room. Oh my God, you guys, Brooke just went live on Instagram. And she's drunk. Very, very drunk. The 3 of us huddled around Rachel's phone like we were watching the final episode of our favorite TV show. The video quality was shaky, clearly being filmed on a phone that wasn't being held steady, and the lighting was terrible. But there was Brooke, sitting on what was obviously Derek's couch. I recognized that hideous abstract art on the wall behind her from his social media posts, wearing her bachelorette party tiara and holding a glass of wine that was definitely not her first of the evening. Hi everyone. She slurred into the camera, her makeup smudged and her hair looking like she'd been running her hands through it for hours. I wanted to go live tonight to tell you all the truth about what's really happening with my wedding tomorrow. Oh, this is going to be good, Jordan said, settling in with his own slice of pizza. Marcus Grant, she continued, saying my name like it tasted bad, has completely ruined my life. All I wanted was closure with someone who meant a lot to me, and he turned it into this whole big thing. Like, literally all I wanted was to spend a couple nights with Derek to make sure I was making the right decision about getting married, and Marcus completely freaked out. The comments section was already going crazy. I could see them flying by. Most of them were not supportive. Girl, what are you even saying right now? Are you seriously admitting to cheating? This is why he left you. But Brooke was either too drunk or too delusional to notice. She kept going, digging her hole deeper with every word. People keep acting like I did something wrong, but I was trying to be honest. I could have just gone behind Marcus's back, but I told him what I was doing because I thought he was mature enough to understand. I thought he was secure enough in our relationship to let me have closure with my past. Let her have closure, Rachel repeated. With her past, while wearing his engagement ring. The train wreck continued for another 10 minutes, with Brooke alternating between crying and ranting about how unfair everything was. She talked about how Derek was the love of her life, but she'd chosen Marcus because he was stable and reliable. She complained about having to cancel all her wedding plans and how embarrassing it was to tell people the wedding was off. I could have had anyone, she said, taking another sip of wine. Derek has been wanting me back for years. He told me he'd do anything to be with me again. And I chose Marcus because I thought we could build a good life together. But he's just as jealous and insecure as every other guy I've dated. The comments were brutal. So you settled for him? You're literally at Derek's place right now. This is the worst apology video ever. But the absolute best part came when Derek himself appeared in the background of the video. You could see him in the kitchen, frantically gesturing for Brooke to stop talking. But she was completely oblivious. The comments immediately picked up on it. Is that Derek behind you? Girl, you're literally proving his point. That's when Brooke really lost it. Someone in the comments asked why she was at Derek's apartment if this was all just about closure, and she completely snapped. Because Marcus kicked me out, she screamed at the phone. He packed up all his stuff and left me with nothing. He canceled our apartment lease, and I had nowhere else to go. Derek is the only person who actually cares about me and supports me through this. Wait, I said, pausing with a piece of pizza halfway to my mouth. She's telling people I kicked her out? I left. She kept the apartment. Facts don't matter when you're having a mental breakdown on Instagram Live, Rachel pointed out. The video kept getting worse. Brooke started crying again, mascara running down her face, talking about how she'd given up so much for our relationship and how ungrateful I was. She claimed she'd turned down job opportunities and moved to Chicago just to be with me, which was interesting since she'd already been living here when we met and had never mentioned any job opportunities elsewhere. Then Derek made his big mistake. He tried to intervene, walking into frame and reaching for Brooke's phone. Babe, maybe you should stop. You're making this worse. Babe, Jordan repeated. Did he just call her babe on her live video? The comments section exploded. Did he just call you babe? You're literally with your ex right now. This is why Marcus left you. You're proving everything he said. But Brooke was too far gone to care. She turned the camera toward Derek, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. This is Derek, she announced. The man who actually loves me and supports me unconditionally. Unlike some people who run away the minute things get complicated. Derek's face went white. Brooke, turn off the phone. Please. No, she said, turning the camera back to herself. I want everyone to know the truth. Marcus is a coward who couldn't handle being with a real woman who has a past. Derek understands me. Derek accepts me for who I am. The whole thing devolved from there. Derek kept trying to get Brooke to end the video while she got increasingly belligerent and defensive. At one point, she actually started reading the negative comments out loud and responding to them, which just made everything worse. You're literally cheating right now, she read. I'm not cheating. I'm single. Marcus broke up with me, remember? I can do whatever I want. This is so embarrassing, she continued. Girl, stop talking. Why should I stop talking? Everyone wants to judge me, but nobody wants to hear my side of the story. The final nail in the coffin came when someone in the comments pointed out that Derek's apartment walls were visible behind her, and they'd seen his address posted on social media before. You're at Derek's place on what should have been your rehearsal dinner. The comment read that Brooke's response was to pan the camera around Derek's living room. showing off his terrible furniture and that god-awful abstract art. Yeah, I'm at Derek's place. So what? At least someone wants me here. The video finally ended when Derek physically took the phone away from her, but not before she managed to slur out one final message. Marcus Grant, if you're watching this, you're going to regret leaving me for the rest of your pathetic life. The silence in Jordan's living room was deafening. Well, Rachel said finally, that happened. Did she just confess to everything on live video? I asked. And then some, Jordan replied. I don't think she could have made herself look worse if she'd tried. By the time we went to bed, the video had been screen recorded and shared across multiple platforms. Whatever reputation Brooke had left was officially gone. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that wedding planners dream about and brides spend months praying for. Ironically, it was absolutely gorgeous weather for a wedding that was never going to happen. Instead of waking up in some overpriced hotel suite, surrounded by groomsmen making terrible jokes and downing mimosas to calm pre-wedding jitters, I was sitting on the deck of a mountain resort 2 hours outside Chicago, breathing in fresh pine air and feeling more at peace than I had in months. I'd driven up to Pine Ridge Lodge Friday night after Brooke's spectacular Instagram Live meltdown, needing to get as far away from the Chicago drama as possible. The resort was one of those places where people go to disconnect from reality. No cell service unless you're near the main lodge, hiking trails that make you forget civilization exists, and a general atmosphere of, your problems can't find you here. It was exactly what I needed while my former life imploded back in the city.my phone, which I'd left charging in the room, had been mercifully quiet all morning. The beauty of being in the middle of nowhere was that whatever fresh hell Brooke and her circus were creating, it couldn't reach me until I was ready to deal with it. I was sipping coffee and watching eagles circle over the lake when I finally decided to check my messages around noon. Holy shit. Apparently, while I was enjoying my peaceful mountain retreat, absolute chaos had erupted back at Lakeside Manor. Despite my canceling everything 3 days ago, despite the venue confirming the cancellation, despite multiple people being informed that there was no wedding happening, somehow 30 people had still shown up in full wedding attire expecting to see me pledge my eternal love to a woman who was probably hungover at her ex-boyfriend's apartment. The messages from Jordan painted a picture so absurd it could have been a Saturday Night Live sketch. Brooke and Helen had apparently told select family members that the wedding was just postponed, not canceled, and that everything would work itself out by Saturday. They'd convinced Brooke's grandmother, her aunts and uncles, a handful of cousins, and even some of her college friends to show up anyway because Marcus would come to his senses. But here's where it got really good. Lakeside Manor, being a popular venue, had booked another event in our place, a corporate retreat for some tech companies celebrating their quarterly achievements. So when Brooke's relatives showed up expecting to find a wedding ceremony, they instead walked into a room full of software engineers wearing matching polo shirts and discussing customer acquisition metrics. Dude, Jordan had texted, you should see the photos Rachel's getting from her friend who works at the venue. Brooke's grandmother showed up in a floor-length purple dress and a fascinator, demanding to know where the bridal party was. Meanwhile, there's a guy in khakis giving a PowerPoint presentation about user engagement in the background. It's surreal. The venue staff, God bless them, had tried to explain that there was no wedding scheduled, but Helen had apparently gone full Karen mode, demanding to speak with managers and threatening to sue everyone in sight. Security had to be called when she tried to force her way into the conference room where the tech bros were trying to enjoy their team-building exercises. But the absolute crown jewel of this disaster was what happened when Derek's father, Robert Morrison, showed up. Apparently, Derek had been telling his parents that he was getting married to Brooke, conveniently leaving out the small detail that she was supposed to be marrying someone else first. Robert had driven 4 hours from Milwaukee, wearing his best suit and carrying a wedding gift, expecting to watch his son finally settle down with a nice girl. Instead, he walked into a clusterfuck of confused wedding guests, corporate retreat attendees, and venue staff trying to manage the chaos. When he asked where Derek was, someone helpfully informed him that Derek was probably at home with his fiancée, who had just canceled her wedding to another man 3 days ago. According to the reports I was getting, Robert had stood there for a full minute processing this information before asking to speak with Helen Patterson. The conversation that followed was apparently loud enough to be heard over the corporate team's trust fall exercises. "Your daughter was supposed to marry someone else today?" Robert had asked, his voice carrying across the entire venue. "It's complicated," Helen had replied, probably realizing that her carefully constructed narrative was about to collapse. "And my son was involved with her while she was engaged to this other man. Derek and Brooke have a special connection. My son helped break up an engagement?" Robert's voice was getting louder. "My son, who I raised to be a decent human being, was sleeping with another man's fiancée?" That's when Helen made her fatal mistake. "Your son has cancer." Brooke was just being supportive during his medical crisis. The silence that followed was apparently so complete that even the tech bros stopped their presentation to see what was happening. Robert stood there, staring at Helen, before pulling out his phone and calling Derek right there in front of everyone. "Derek," he said, loud enough for half the venue to hear, "I'm standing in a place where you're supposed to be getting married today, except there's no wedding because the bride was apparently already engaged to someone else. And this woman is telling me you have cancer. So I have one question for you. What the fuck is going on?" The phone conversation lasted about 30 seconds before Robert hung up and turned back to Helen and the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "my son does not have cancer. He has never had cancer. He's been lying to manipulate this woman and destroy her relationship with her fiancé. And as of right now, he's no longer my son." Then he walked out, leaving his wedding gift on the reception table and Helen standing there with her mouth open like a fish out of water. The police were called for the second time in 3 days, and the whole group was finally escorted off the property. But the damage was done. Brooke's family had witnessed the complete exposure of Derek's lies, Helen's manipulation tactics, and the utter insanity of their entire plan. The best part, according to Jordan's updates, was that Brooke's sister Diana had been recording the whole thing on her phone. By the time I was reading these messages, clips of Robert disowning Derek and Helen's shocked reaction were already circulating on social media. Diana had even sent a message to Jordan. "Please tell Marcus I'm sorry for my family's insanity. This is completely unhinged, and I'm done with all of them. Also, can you send me his address? I want to return the wedding gift I bought. He deserves better than this circus." As I sat there reading about the spectacular finale to what should have been my wedding day, I felt something I didn't expect: gratitude. Not just relief, not just vindication, but genuine gratitude that Brooke had sent me that text on Wednesday. Because if she hadn't, I would have married into this family of manipulative, delusional people and probably spent years trying to figure out why I was so miserable. Instead, I was sitting on a mountain, breathing clean air, and watching my former problems destroy themselves without any help from me. It was the best wedding day I never had. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, a beautiful corner unit in Lincoln Park that I could actually afford now that I wasn't splitting everything with someone who considered a $300 throw pillow a necessity, scrolling through my phone and marveling at how completely my life had transformed. The autumn sunlight was streaming through windows that were actually clean because I'd learned to take care of my own space, and my coffee tasted better than it ever had when I was sharing a kitchen with someone who criticized my brewing technique daily. The aftermath of what I'd started calling the Great Wedding Disaster of 2025 had been almost poetic in its justice. Brooke and Derek were still together, if you could call what they had together. Last I'd heard through the Chicago Gossip Network, they were living in Derek's basement studio apartment because Brooke had been evicted from our old place after missing 3 months of rent. Apparently, when you spend all your time having dramatic meltdowns on social media instead of going to work, employers tend to notice. Their relationship, from what I could gather through mutual acquaintances who couldn't resist sharing updates, was exactly as toxic and miserable as you'd expect. Brooke had discovered that Derek, without the thrill of sneaking around and lying to other people, was just an unemployed man-child who played video games all day and couldn't hold down a job because he kept getting fired for personality conflicts with his supervisors. Derek, meanwhile, had learned that Brooke, without the ego boost of having multiple men competing for her attention, was just a high-maintenance drama queen who expected him to fund her lifestyle while she found herself. The best part was that Brooke kept posting these obviously fake happy couple photos on Instagram, trying to convince the world that they were living some great love story. But anyone with functioning eyes could see that Derek looked miserable in every single picture. and Brooke's captions were getting increasingly desperate. "Living my best life with my soulmate," she'd write, while Derek looked like he was being held hostage in the background of their selfies. Helen and Roger's divorce had been finalized 2 months ago, and from what I'd heard, it had been spectacular. Roger had apparently kept detailed records of Helen's spending habits and her involvement in encouraging Brooke's affair, which hadn't played well in court. Helen was now living in a one-bedroom apartment and working at a department store cosmetics counter, a far cry from her country club queen lifestyle. Roger, meanwhile, had moved to Florida, bought a boat, and according to his Facebook posts, was living his best life fishing and playing golf without anyone telling him he was doing it wrong. The Morrison family drama had been equally satisfying to watch from a distance. Derek's father, Robert, had followed through on his threat to disown his son, cutting off all financial support and removing Derek from his will. Derek's mother had sided with Robert after learning the full extent of Derek's lies and manipulation. Last I'd heard, Derek had tried reaching out to them around Christmas, but they'd refused to even take his calls. But honestly, the most satisfying part of this whole experience wasn't watching my former problems self-destruct. It was discovering what my life looked like when I wasn't constantly managing someone else's emotional chaos. For the first time in years, I could make plans without having to check with someone who might suddenly decide she had feelings about whatever I wanted to do. I could have friends over without worrying about whether they'd meet Brooke's social standards. I could eat cereal for dinner if I wanted to, or spend an entire Saturday reading without someone complaining that I was being antisocial. My work life had improved dramatically too. Without the constant stress of relationship drama, I'd been able to focus on my projects and had gotten promoted to senior account manager just last month. My boss had actually commented on how much more creative and confident I'd become, which was hilarious because all I'd done was remove one extremely negative person from my daily routine. The climbing group I joined had become a regular part of my week, and through them I'd met Elise Chun, a software engineer who worked for one of those companies that makes apps people actually use instead of corporate nonsense. When I told her the story of my canceled wedding, she'd laughed so hard she'd almost fallen off the climbing wall. "Wait," she'd said. "She actually thought you'd be okay with her sleeping with her ex-boyfriend before your wedding? And then she was surprised when you canceled everything. She called me mature and secure for agreeing to it," I'd explained. "That's not mature, that's being a doormat. There's a huge difference." What I loved about Elise was that she was exactly the opposite of everything that had been wrong with my relationship with Brooke. She was direct instead of manipulative, honest instead of dramatic, and she actually seemed to enjoy my company instead of treating me like an accessory to her lifestyle. When she said she wanted to do something, she meant it. When she was upset about something, she told me what was wrong instead of making me guess. It was like discovering that relationships didn't have to be psychological warfare disguised as romance. We'd been dating for 3 months now, and not once had she mentioned needing closure with any ex-boyfriends. Crazy concept, I know. The few mutual friends I still had from my Brooke days would occasionally update me on the ongoing drama. Apparently, Brooke and Derek had broken up and gotten back together 4 times since my wedding disaster, each time with increasingly public social media announcements about their unbreakable bond and meant-to-be connection. The last breakup had involved Brooke throwing Derek's PlayStation out of their second-story window, which had been captured on someone's Ring camera and shared widely among people who knew them. Gretchen, Derek's sister who had been Brooke's maid of honor, had actually reached out to me a few months ago to apologize for her family's role in the whole mess. She'd been mortified when she learned about Derek's cancer lies and had apparently spent weeks texting Brooke trying to talk sense into her before finally giving up and cutting contact with both of them. "I should have seen what was happening," she'd said. "Derek always was a manipulative little shit, but I thought he'd grown out of it. And Brooke, I don't know what happened to her. She used to be fun and normal, but somewhere along the way she turned into this person who thinks the world owes her something." Looking back now, I could see all the red flags I'd ignored during my relationship with Brooke. The way she'd talk about her exes like they were all crazy or couldn't handle her. The way she'd create drama with waitstaff and retail workers for no reason. The way she'd test my boundaries constantly, seeing how much she could get away with. The way she'd always have some crisis that required immediate attention and emotional support, but somehow never had time to provide the same support when I needed it. But the biggest red flag had been how exhausted I felt all the time when I was with her. I thought it was just the stress of wedding planning or work pressure, but now I realized it was the constant effort of trying to manage someone who was fundamentally unmanageable. These days, I woke up looking forward to my day instead of wondering what crisis would need my attention. I made plans with friends without having to negotiate or justify my choices. I pursued hobbies that made me happy instead of activities that would impress other people. And when people asked me about the wedding that never happened, I told them the truth. It was the best thing that never happened to me, because Brooke's text message hadn't ended everything. It had set me free.